The Cowboys, the Yankees, the Bulls. Unlike other major sports, NASCAR team logos aren't exactly iconic. How many people are you going to see walking down the street with a Roush Racing hat? But the numbers are iconic. And it's not just the number 43, it's this specific number 43, the petty blue, the rounded edges, the shadow. That logo is iconic. With Dale Earnhardt Jr. recently bringing his old number 8 logo back into NASCAR, I began to think about other iconic NASCAR number logos. Rather than just list them all out in typical YouTuber fashion, I decided to pit them against each other, put them on a tier list. Welcome to the Out of the Groove Groovy Grid. Pretty simple, groovy tier reserved for the best of the best, down to C tier, then extra credit, which I know sounds bad, but I want to be clear. Every number I'm about to put on this list is iconic. Just because one of your favorite numbers may be down in that scary red tier, that doesn't mean it's bad. It's still iconic, just not quite as iconic as those in groovy tier, for example. Anyway, y'all know how this works. Let's get started. We'll start at the top and work our way down. Obviously, the petty 43 deserves to be in this tier. The king, 200 wins, 7 cup championships. This number, this logo, still recognizable, still relevant to this day. Easy groovy tier, as is the Richard Childress Racing number 3, the Earnhardt 3. I would argue this is the most iconic number logo in NASCAR history. It still weaves its way into popular culture. It's fashionable, it's timeless, 3 for Dale, the Intimidator, easy groovy tier. My first controversial take, perhaps, is that the DEI number 8 also deserves to be in groovy tier. Junior Motorsports has launched an entire social media campaign this week centered around reintroducing this logo. It's just a font change. I can go into my Google Doc right now and with 2 clicks change the entire font. It's not that big a deal, except it is because it's this logo. It's Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s old number. Dale Jr. slapped this logo on a late model and sold $500,000 worth of merch in just a few days. The red number 8 is still extremely relevant. It deserves to be in groovy tier. Instantly recognizable, iconic. That's groovy tier. Even non-NASCAR fans likely would see those logos, associate them with racing, speed, America. That's why they're on the top. I've reserved A tier for some of the other iconic number logos from NASCAR's heyday, the 90s, the mid-2000s. We'll start with Jeff Gordon's 24. Look, if we're talking about the whole Jeff Gordon experience, the bright colors, the rainbow, the flames, the mullet, the stash, yeah, he'd be in groovy tier. Jeff Gordon is as iconic as Dale Earnhardt. But I'm not putting the drivers on a tier list, I'm talking about the number logo. And sometimes I feel the yellow 24 kind of gets lost underneath all the flash. When we think Jeff Gordon, we think rainbows, we think flames, we think mullet, we think SNL, we think Looney Tunes back in action. Oh yes, and he drove the Hendrick 24. Still extremely iconic, but I don't think it's quite at the same level as the Earnhardt 3, for example. The 24 does continue to live on. William Byron now contending for championships, so maybe the 24 will move up the tier list in the coming years, but for now, it sits solidly in A tier next to his teammate, the Hendrick 48. During my formative years, that yellow 48 was usually in victory lane, usually hoisting the Cup Series championship trophy at year's end, covered in confetti. The cool, calm consistency of that yellow 48 gave me fits as a kid, haunted my dreams, turned them into nightmares. 5 straight Cup Series championships, 7 total. Easily one of the most iconic number logos in modern NASCAR history. A tier for the 48, and this one may also be a controversial take. Give me the Penske 2. It's been the same design for more than 3 decades. Hall of Fame drivers like Rusty Wallace, future Hall of Famer Brad Keselowski have brought it to victory lane. Keselowski won a championship in this car. Gotta give Miller Lite a lot of credit as well. I think Miller Lite has made the Blue Deuce as iconic as it is. Growing up, I couldn't go into a single sports bar without seeing a red and blue neon number 2 sign, a Miller Lite hood hanging on the wall. The blue deuce, extremely iconic, hasn't changed much in years, still going strong today with Austin Cindric. I think the 2 is one of the most iconic number logos, especially from during NASCAR's golden years, the heyday, if you will. Let's head to B tier. I've reserved this tier for some of the more historic number logos, ones that may not resonate with the casual fan, but if you've watched stock car racing for a long time, if you understand the roots, the history, then these numbers are instantly iconic, beginning, of course, with the Wood Brothers 21. NASCAR's oldest team, still going strong today, from David Pearson to winning at Daytona just a few months back. The Wood Brothers continue to be icons of stock car racing. I think this is a perfect example. Non-race fans probably won't recognize the Wood Brothers 21, but if you are a big race fan, yeah, you understand its importance, why it's such an icon. Also the 11. The winningest number in NASCAR history has to be on this list somewhere. I think the Junior Johnson 11 should fall into B tier. Cale Yarborough, Darrell Waltrip, Hall of Famers raced this logo, won in this logo. Cale won 3 straight championships in this car. That old yellowish orange Holly Farms scheme, this number logo is iconic if you're a longtime race fan, if you really love to dive into the NASCAR history books. Junior Johnson himself, the legends who raced for him. Yeah, the 11 had to make this list. Denny Hamlin is great. Bill Elliott won a lot of races in the 11 as well, but the Junior Johnson font, I think, is the most iconic if you're looking at all of NASCAR history. This may also be controversial, but I think the Petty 42 should make the list. The Kyle Petty font from the 90s is really cool, but I'm going to give a nod to Lee Petty, one of the earliest fonts that sort of kickstarted the Petty family dynasty. We've seen recent throwback schemes use this font. Instantly recognizable, in my opinion. I think we got to give Lee Petty's old 42 logo a nod. And one more for B tier. I don't know which 28 to use. I could use the Robert Yates more rounded 28, but I think I'm going to go with this. I mean, Buddy Baker, Cale Yarborough, the Gray Ghost. No matter which 28 you prefer, a 28 needs to be in this tier somewhere. I'll go with this one. Let's put some more modern logos here in C tier, beginning with the orange Joe Gibbs Racing number 20, the Tony Stewart Home Depot days. Championships in 2002, 2005, literally when NASCAR was at its peak. I still see orange Home Depot merchandise out in the wild today. Obviously, the JGR 20 is still around today, has had success with Logano, Matt Kenseth, recently Christopher Bell, but the orange Home Depot colored 20 to me is among NASCAR's most iconic number logos ever. I'm also gonna put the Dale Jr. or Hendrick 88 in C tier. I mean, really anything Dale Earnhardt Jr. touches becomes iconic, right? Shoot, Justin Marks said recently that he called Dale Jr., Kelly Earnhardt, to get their blessing before running the 88 with Trackhouse next year. The 88 is linked to the Earnhardts. That makes it iconic by default. I don't make the rules, I just enforce them. 88 in C tier. Back to Joe Gibbs Racing, one of NASCAR's most successful modern teams. The number that started it all, the 18. Legends like Dale Jarrett, Bobby Labonte won a championship in this number. Kyle Busch, of course, 2-time champion. The green Interstate Batteries colors have been part of this logo for decades. It is iconic. It's a shame it's currently semi-retired, at least on the Cup Series side, but you gotta imagine one day, the Joe Gibbs 18 will make its triumphant Cup Series return. It's too iconic to just let it sit dormant off to the side out of the spotlight. And one more for C tier. We'll go old school for this one. The number 9 has to be on this list at least once. Bill Elliott, NASCAR's most popular driver for many, many years. To me, this is the number 9 I most closely associate with him, which sounds weird because when I grew up, he was driving the Evernham 9. And the Evernham 9 is also extremely iconic, might sneak onto this list a little later, but the Melling 9, Winston Million, $1 Million Bill, Cup Series champion, iconic red and blue colors, the Coors Light scheme. I think this 9 logo deserves to be on this list somewhere. Finally, the extra credit category. It was difficult for me to find a place for each of these logos, so I figured I'd mention them at the end. The Roush 6, one of my personal favorites, but I couldn't decide which one to choose. The 6 has changed its design numerous times over the past several decades. This is my favorite. Mark Martin ran this one around the year 2000, late 90s maybe. Spikes, it's edgy. I like it, had to make my list. I had a similar issue with the Hendrick 5. It's seen a few different fonts over the years. Do you go with the original Jeff Bodine style or maybe Terry Labonte? It was more slanted for a few years there. What about the modern Kyle Larson 5? The modern 5 logo has looked about the same now for 20 plus years. I think it should be on this list, whether it's the neon Kellogg's colors, the GoDaddy years with Mark Martin, or the modern HendrickCars.com blue. I think the 5 should be on this list. Moving on, the Yates 88, made famous by Hall of Fame driver Dale Jarrett. No matter the color, red, blue, brown, one of the most iconic logos from the 90s and early to mid 2000s, in my opinion. The Kulwicki number 7 should be on this list as well. Great underdog story, NASCAR Cup Series champion, the recognizable orange Hooters colors. This is an iconic number logo, stands the test of time. The 7 should be on this list. And finally, I teased this earlier. Yes, the Evernham number 9, one of the most iconic logos in NASCAR history. I agree. A lot of people will associate this with Dodge's big return to NASCAR in the 2000s, bright red schemes. Hendrick ran a throwback to this scheme recently. Iconic drivers again like Bill Elliott, Casey Kane made this number relevant. Absolutely iconic. There you go. That's my list. I showed restraint. I didn't put the Kenseth Riser 17 on there. That should tell you this is an extremely objective list. My personal favorite number logo list would look a little different, but I tried to be balanced, fair, think big picture. I feel pretty good about this list. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my picks down in the comment section below. Are there any number logos that I forgot? Would you change the tiers, the categories? Would you move anyone up, move anyone down? Let me know. You won't hurt my feelings. Maybe y'all thought of something that I completely forgot. Anyway, that's it for this episode, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hope that was fun. I'll talk to you again real soon. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks for watching.